It was the moment everyone had waited for, the bride walking down the aisle, the groom standing at the altar, light streaming through stained glass, and the congregation filled with smiling faces. But then, something shifted. The pastor raised his hand. He paused mid-blessing. In that sudden silence, a single, heavy question rippled through the church: why would he stop the ceremony now? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Who were these two people, so in love, so ready to promise their lives to each other? What secret lay hidden under the lace and satin of the bride's dress? Why, at the very edge of their "I do," did the pastor, a man they trusted to guide them into this sacred covenant, suddenly halt the entire wedding? What was he seeing, or remembering, that none of the guests did? As the question settled over everyone in that room, a truth was waiting to be uncovered, a past that neither Sarah nor Michael had talked about in years, until that day. Stay with me, because the story you're about to hear changes everything. Sarah grew up in a quiet town in Georgia, the kind of place where church bells chime on Sunday mornings and the air smells faintly of magnolia and fresh-cut grass. She was raised by her mother, Helen, after her younger sister, Lily, had died in a car accident when they were children. That loss shaped Sarah in ways she never fully admitted. She became cautious, thoughtful, kind, and always afraid of imperfect love. Michael, on the other hand, was a problem solver by nature. He worked as a civil engineer in Atlanta, designing bridges and overseeing construction projects. But outside his professional life, he volunteered at the church youth group where Sarah taught reading and writing to middle schoolers. Their connection grew slowly. Michael would help Helen carry boxes of books for Sarah's tutoring program, and Sarah would invite him to dinner after youth group, offering a slice of her mother's apple pie and warm conversation. Their courtship was steady, without fanfare, guided by Sunday worship, home-cooked meals, and long drives back and forth on winding country roads. Sarah's laughter was soft but genuine. Michael listened when she spoke of her sister, though she rarely mentioned Lily by name. And Michael shared his own burdens too. His first job had collapsed under unexpected costs, and he carried guilt about quitting a dream job so he could support his family. Helen believed they belonged together. She'd tell Sarah, almost every week, "You two were made for each other." John, Michael's father, nodded silently in agreement, his work-worn hands folded in his lap during Sunday services. But Sarah's heart was never entirely at peace. She wondered if she deserved to love again, feared her grief might overshadow everything. At night, she dreamed of Lily's voice, or her absence, sometimes waking with tears she couldn't name. Michael, too, carried doubts. He worried that one day, Sarah's grief would return, that their shared history would collapse under the weight of unspoken things. Yet, he loved her fiercely, and she loved him in return. In church meetings, youth group events, and quiet dinners, they built a foundation. And eventually, they decided, they would get married. The wedding day was bright, calm, almost too perfect. The sanctuary of the old brick church was alive with soft sunlight filtering through stained glass windows, hues of deep red, blue, amber. The pews were filled with friends and family, Helen, her eyes shining, John, his voice catching, youth group kids, some giggling, older congregants, wiping their glasses as they tried not to cry. The air smelled of fresh flowers, white roses, jasmine, and something warm like vanilla from the candles. Sarah stood behind the doors to the sanctuary, her heart flattening and then racing again. Her veil felt heavier than she expected, her breath caught in her throat. She remembered a moment that morning, holding Lily's favorite teddy bear, the one her mother had tucked away after Lily's accident. She touched its worn ear one last time, tucked it into a drawer, and told herself she was ready. Michael, standing at the front, waited. He smiled at her the moment she appeared, and she nearly lost her breath. His eyes glistened, his voice trembled when he whispered to the pastor, "Thank you for doing this." Reverend Adams, who had baptized both of them, nodded gently. As the ceremony began, the pastor spoke words of love, commitment, and grace. Sarah and Michael exchanged vows they had written together, promises to be honest, kind, and faithful. She looked at him and saw his dreams, building bridges, helping his family, caring for her, and he saw her kindness, her strength, her quiet courage. Everything seemed beautifully aligned. Then, just as Michael was about to say the final words, "With this ring, I thee wed," Reverend Adams held up his hand. He paused. The music stuttered softly in the background. Sarah felt a sudden coldness, as though someone had opened a window on a winter day. The pastor's voice, firm yet gentle, broke the hush. "I need to ask you a question." The congregation held its breath. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following till the end. Sarah's heartbeat pounded. She stared at the pastor, then at Michael, then at the sea of faces around her. She tried to steady her throat, but her voice wouldn't come. Reverend Adams asked her to lift her veil just a little, to meet his eyes. She obeyed, trembling. The soft lace brushed her cheeks. He leaned in, looked closely, and his expression changed. He whispered something to Michael, a few low words she couldn't hear. Michael's face tightened, confusion mixed with care. The pastor turned back to Sarah and repeated, "Who are you, really?" The question landed in her chest like a stone. She opened her mouth, closed it. She looked at Michael, his eyes were full of love, but also a question she had never fully answered. She looked at Reverend Adams, his gaze was kind, but firm, expecting truth. She swallowed the tremor in her voice and said simply, I'm Sarah." But the pastor shook his head gently, as though that was not enough. He held up a small, faded photograph, worn around the edges, clearly old. In it was a young girl, no more than 8 or 9, standing beside another girl, Sarah, and her sister Lily. Sarah's breath caught. The congregation leaned in, murmuring softly. Reverend Adams spoke, "This was sent to me by someone in the congregation. Someone believed you should know I saw it." He paused. "I asked before the ceremony to look at church records, old photos, names. I had reasons to ask. And when I saw this, I recognized her, you, as a child. But I also recognized someone else. Your sister." Sarah's hands trembled. She stared at the photo, tears gathering in her eyes. Michael stepped forward, voice wavering, "Sarah, what is this?" She closed her eyes, swallowed hard, and began to tell them. She told them the story she had never fully shared, how Lily's death had broken her world. How she changed her name shortly afterward. How she left town for a while, not wanting to be the girl everyone remembered as Lily's sister, a sister who died. She confessed she had used a different name for years, even in youth group, even in church. It was not dishonesty born of malice, but of deep fear, fear that people would see the broken pieces of her and reject her. She had believed that if she became someone else, she could outrun her guilt, her grief. As she spoke, Reverend Adams nodded, his own voice soft but clear, "We all carry a story. We all carry loss, secrets, names we once were. But marriage is not just about the person you present to the world, it's about the person you've been, the wounds you carry, the soul that precedes your present." The room felt fragile, as though held together by a thread of truth. Michael reached out, put his hand on Sarah's. His voice cracked, "I love you, all of you. But I need to understand." His honesty felt brave, raw. Then came the moment no one expected. Reverend Adams lowered his voice, looked at the crowd, "Before you rush to judgment, remind yourselves that grace is not earned by perfection. It is offered to those who are honest about who they are." He turned back to Sarah, "Thank you for telling me." He paused, then said directly to Michael, "Do you still wish to proceed?" Michael swallowed, his eyes moist. He nodded slowly. "But instead of finishing the vows that day," he said, "I don't want to step into something without fully knowing you. Give me a little time, a little more of your truth, before I promise forever." Sarah nodded, tears falling softly. The guests murmured, some wiping their eyes, others clenching hands. Helen stepped forward, and wrapped her arms around her daughter. John reached over and held Michael's hand. The church felt smaller, more intimate. Reverend Adams closed his Bible gently, and offered a closing thought: love is courageous. Trust is fragile. Marriage is not simply a celebration, it is a journey into all the terrain of a person's life, including the hidden valleys. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Michael did not rush to reschedule the wedding. Instead, they met. They sat over coffee in a little cafe, or on a bench in the church garden, or in Sarah's small apartment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city at dusk. They talked about everything: Lily and the accident, the teddy bear she kept, the guilt she carried. Sarah told Michael how she had changed her name, how she had grown in silence, how she had tried to become safe. Michael shared his own dreams, his regrets, his fear of failure. They prayed together. Reverend Adams met with them twice a week, gently guiding their conversations, helping them rebuild trust. He reminded them that healing takes time, that the decision to marry should come from a place of full awareness, not hiding. And they listened. 6 months later, they returned to the same church. The stained glass windows glowed again in the afternoon sun. The pews were filled not just with family and friends but with people who had watched their story: youth group members, church elders, neighbors. The atmosphere was different now, quieter, more grounded, more real. Sarah walked down that aisle again, but this time her steps felt lighter. Her veil still brushed her face, but she carried her past openly, no longer hiding. Michael stood at the altar, waiting with honest eyes. Reverend Adams smiled, hands steady. They exchanged vows, simple, true, rooted in the journey they had traveled together. When Sarah said, "I do," she meant all of herself. When Michael said it back, he meant it from his whole heart. As they sealed their promises with a kiss, the congregation clapped softly, many wiping away tears. Helen and John embraced. Reverend Adams placed his hand on their joined hands, a silent benediction offered. What would you have done if you were Michael? If you learned that the person you loved changed her name, changed her life story, would you still say, "I do," right then? Or would you ask for time to understand? Share in the comments, we'd really like to know how you feel. And if you think this story touched you, or made you pause, then make sure to subscribe. There are more stories like this, stories of love, of truth, and of redemption, coming soon. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening. As you consider Sarah and Michael's journey, reflect for a moment: what part of your own story are you hiding, perhaps even from yourself? We often fear that our past will disqualify us from love, from acceptance. But truth has a way of freeing us, especially when we share it. And when someone truly loves us, they don't just promise to love who we are now, they commit to walking with us through who we've been, who we're becoming, and who we hope to be. May we all have the courage to be fully ourselves. May we all find people who love all of us, not just our polished present, but the chapters we wish we could erase. And may grace guide us, gently, every step of the way.